What's up, guys? Chris Hart here, Sold Out Servant. Today we'll be reacting to a video from Earn Your Leisure from an individual guy who's just like me and you, man, was working part-time, full-time at Verizon, part-time built a real estate business, man. His name's Storm Leroy, and he built a multi-billion-dollar business through real estate, right, while working at a full-time job. We'll be looking at how life insurance and trust play a role with building wealth.
So, all right, let me ask you this. I heard you talk about living trust and how that changed your life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in 2019, my life changed. Buying real estate, doing all these great things. I understood the value of having real estate and wanting to hand it over to my legacy, to create a legacy with that. But once I actually went to create a living trust and I saw what it can do, that's when I knew I had a bigger narrative I needed to share with the people. So my thing was, I looked at who created a living trust to hand it down through their legacy. And I said, it's Rockefeller. So I went on to read the Rockefeller Trust from 1934. And also there's a book called What Would Rockefeller Do? So I stayed up reading all these things about how he would take this, put it in an account and only give a portion to the legacy and then have his children create a trust. And now that money compound interest, he wouldn't give it to them until they turn a certain age. And I'm like, I could do that. We can do that. The information was right there. So I sat down with my trust attorney. I said, I want to do that. Like, well, you want to do it, but I want to do that. It can be done. So we structured it, worked it out where, but unfortunately we all pass away. When I pass away, a percentage of my properties would be sold, not the ones that I hold long-term. Like I have properties I do keep. My short-term properties, those would be sold. That money would now go into a brokerage account. That brokerage account would be in the name of the trust. That money for that specific account would be for my grandchildren starting off, not my immediate family. My immediate family would get my life insurance policies, which are millions of dollars policies, and the main properties that I hold. So they're taken care of.
What's crazy is that we actually saw a video about this couple months back, maybe even a year or so ago, about generational wealth, right? And you see Storm here talking about what the Rockefellers did, man. It's actually it's a book, right? And it's crazy that we have the ability to build generational wealth. It's a really hot buzzword in the African American community. Generational wealth, the wealth gap, right? We know that whites have up to, I want to say, over 100 times more wealth in their accounts than African Americans do. Even Latin America has has I think 3 to 4 times more wealth than African Americans. What are we doing about that? How are we bridging this gap? Well, he's giving us the advice on how to do it.
But we need to start thinking about the grandkids, the great grandkids, those generations. How do you start their growth? You start their growth by putting that money in a brokerage account, and they don't get that money until they turn 21 years old. So let's use the example of $1 million. I put $1 million in a brokerage account for my grandkids. They don't get that till they turn 21, gaining 6% interest. 6% interest, let's say that's 21. So that money turns into about $3.8 million for my grandkids. My grandkids, they wouldn't get it all. They would get half, about 1.6. So I'll leave 1.6 in there for my great grandchildren for 21 years. That now turns into about 3, 4, 5, 6. That turns into about $6.7 million for my great grandchildren. They don't get it all, they get half. So now that's about about 2.3 stays in for my great grandchildren. So they get about $8.1 million. You see how that happens? That's compound interest over 21 years. So we have to look at that number. But what makes the trigger and the explosion even bigger is the fact that what Rockefeller did is that was just his trust. What he did was now each child opened up a trust. So now his children had a trust. So he would pay his grandchildren and his children would pay them. That's twice. So now his children, then his grandchildren have a trust. So his great grandchildren would get paid 3 times. So now if we look at Rockefeller Trust paid out now 11 generations and counting continuously. And what he also did was have a life insurance policy on every person in the trust, creating his own bank.
So he's giving us key principles here on how to build wealth. It's easy. Anybody can go out there and get a policy for life insurance. As long as you're healthy, you're breathing, he said it. That's your wealth right there, because you get a $500,000 policy, a $1.2 million policy, you pass away. You do your due diligence, you put it into a trust, you fund the trust for generational wealth from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next. What happens is you now have wealth generated from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations.
And now what does that do? This is my structure also. Any one of my children or grandchildren who want to start a business, what do? Talk to the trustees. And now you borrow money. We become our own bank. So when someone dies, that money goes into the trust. You pay, when you get the policy, you pay it outright. So now that money is available in the trust. So now also what I did was I retweaked my trust last year, and it was 21 that I wouldn't give them money. I changed it. I changed it where they get money at 18 and they can have a business started at 11. You know why? Because now with technology, kids are now figuring out new ways to start a business. So I want them to be able to present a business loan, a business proposal to the trustees so they could borrow money. These are the things where we don't look at them. When people say, I don't have the money to do this, you know what I tell them? Yes, you do. The air you breathe is money. A life insurance policy. Soon as you die, you worth money. There are generations and there are groups of people. When people die, their objective is to make sure they have a policy on their grandmother, policy on their father to do exactly what we're talking about. But we look at it as taboo when it can't be taboo. It shouldn't be taboo. The main thing about it is you're thinking about the legacy. And when I tell people, when I speak to you, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to your legacy. You're just a vessel for me to get the message to you so you can hear the message and see it, and it reverberates in your brain. And as it's doing this, you literally are talking to your legacy while I'm speaking, going, I got you. Don't worry. Storm told me how to do it now. I'm gonna give me a life insurance policy. When people have a life insurance policy, let's say roughly $4 million, you have $500,000 left on your home mortgage, and you say to yourself, I'm leaving my family $1 million. Actually, you're not. Because when you die, that policy has to pay $500,000 to the mortgage so they can stay in the house.
Yep.
You're only leaving them $500,000. We don't think about that mortgage behind us. So this is where I say, get yourself a whole life, get yourself a term that's for $500,000 or $1 million just to cover the house. Yep. So your real policy doesn't get broken up. And now you have that term, pay off the mortgage, any money left, put it in a brokerage account, and now you start the system.
We usually think of life insurance as a death benefit only. You heard the man, he said, get a term policy to cover your liabilities. Get a life insurance policy to cover your mortgage. But do you have a infinite banking policy in force? Do you have a whole life policy? Do you have an IUL? Do you know what an IUL is? Have you ever heard of index universal life? These concepts here allow us to say, okay, cool. In today's day and age, with technology, with advancements, with YouTube, there's no reason why we can't be self-taught or educated on taking certain concepts to build wealth for our families. And so I believe in this concept 100%. I have my own family, right? Take a life insurance policy and you fund the trust with life insurance, right? And what it does is it dictates, like he just said, his kids get access to money at age 18. Maybe if you was 21. Maybe you say, hey, at 19, 18, you get a check. You get more at 25, more at age 30. Maybe you say, hey, this policy will pay for college, will pay for a business investment. I love this idea. I have the same concept for my family. The trustees say, hey, you have a business opportunity or a business idea? Come to us. Okay, cool. How does it sound? It sounds good. You can borrow money from the family trust. So I think that more individuals from all backgrounds of life need to take into account and say, okay, cool, let me take ownership for my family's future. Let me study these concepts. Let me reach out to a professional that can help navigate these waters for me, because it's important to take action, not just to watch, not just to study, not just to read. Take action and say, hey man, how do I get involved? How do I start? Maybe you're saying, man, Chris, me and my family want to get involved in real estate. We want to own more properties. How do you leverage a trust? How do you leverage life insurance to fund trust, right? To fund that real estate endeavor, right? You've seen some of my videos in the past about how to build an Airbnb rental empire, right? An Airbnb empire through life insurance. This is the same concept. What you're doing is taking your finances in your control and saying, hey man, how do I build this thing from the ground? What do you need? You need a life insurance agent. Somebody who understands life insurance and how it works, how to properly structure a life insurance policy. You need a trust lawyer. Someone who can actually build the trust for you. And then from there, with your trust lawyer, I would say your accountant, tax preparer, and life insurance agent, you're able to say, okay, let me build a full-fledged plan to guarantee generational wealth for generations to come from my family. So if anything here piqued your interest, you have questions, you have thoughts, you have comments, guys, please comment in the comment section below. Guys, follow us on Instagram @SoldOutServant and subscribe to the channel here. Until next time, God bless, and we'll see you soon.